It's Momo Monday, and you know what to do. Breathe in. And out. And breathe in. And out. Now, I realize there's still a lot of new viewers for my channel lately, so perhaps some people don't know what Momo Monday is about. Momo Monday is a way of starting the week using cat pictures and looking at sort of the emotional and psychological end of stuff affecting gamers, nerds, all that good stuff. But you'll notice I sound a bit rough this week because I spent a lot of time this week making this giant cake for a friend's father's 70th birthday party. You'll see Momo nicely photobombed the background of it. And between this and getting ready for Passover and all the various and sundry other things that have to be done because of our various spring festivals that happened in Canada, and because my family is multi-faith, this is a busy time of year. You do get really worn out. I am very introverted, so being around a lot of people, especially when it's loud and all that stuff, I am pretty wrecked the next day. And here's Scout helping me edit the Kathy Young interview from last week. But what else has been going on, and I'm not going to say very much because this particular individual and their surrounding individuals, I believe, are trying to do this to get attention, but someone has been making, veiled threats about the usual nonsense that goes on with YouTube doxing and swatting and all that stuff. And it's unfortunately just the cost of doing business, which is really annoying. And I've thought about a lot. How do I encourage someone to go into making YouTube videos as a business when I know the amount of hostility and negativity that are going on about this? And this person, it isn't even me who's the ultimate target. It's a person that I am, friendly with, I have done some work with, and this person is so jealous. I mean, that's my assumption of this other person, that they just try to destroy anyone who does anything with them. And that is really, to brush up against that kind of, I don't even know what you call it. Like, it's a demon inside people. And I discovered in trying to explore this that there isn't a lot of really good writing out there understanding non-romantic jealousy, understanding professional jealousy and things like that. And you'll notice I live with a lot of cats who don't get jealous, except for Delilah. Delilah gets very jealous. She beats up Momo because Momo spends too much time with me. So I guess I look at Delilah for my lessons on jealousy. But I'm really surprised at how poorly understood professional jealousy is. And I find this kind of alarming, that we have all this information on other things, but professional jealousy, especially jealousy among creatives, is one of those things. It's almost like a dirty secret of the industry. If you want to do anything involving being in the public, or anything involving writing or creating or anything like that, professional jealousy is something you are going to have to address and overcome, because everybody feels it to an extent. And I personally think that it's less about the other person and more about insecurities in yourself. And that's why I think it burns so hot and it becomes so unhealthy. It's running from that sense that, oh, it's never going to work. I'm never going to make it. I'm a fool for doing this. And that is the sign of a lack of a support system around a creative person when there's that kind of sense. And unfortunately, that kind of comes with the territory when you take a flyer on these things. I don't know why, for some odd reason, if someone starts a plumbing business or someone starts an interior design business or someone starts a deck business or whatever, something that people understand as sort of a trade, people get, oh, they're doing a business. Even people who get into very high risk businesses like sales, like stock trading, things like that, these are seen as legitimate. The problem is creativity as a job is not seen by many as legitimate. And so those ups and downs that everybody gets in business are seen as somehow foolish when it's a creative endeavor. And I think everyone gets it in a different way, because women get this negative social stigma for wanting to make money from something, and men get this negative social stigma for wanting to be creative and make money at it. So the monetization part is okay for guys, but not the creative part. And that's when you run into some of these stereotypes that if you're, just creating to express yourself, then you're being selfless. You're sort of doing this weird performance display of femininity, and people are okay with that. But the minute you start saying, no, I think I should be paid for what I do, then people start getting not so nice. And it's a really hard thing to explain. I don't think it's the general, the haters online and all that stuff. It's not about that. It's the people immediately around you, family and friends and all that stuff. They start getting helpfully cruel. They think they're helping you by dissuading you from following your dreams. But it really is funny that you get this, and I don't tell anybody what I'm doing, and my mother doesn't understand what I do. And so I get a lot less of it than friends of mine who are quite successful authors by the benchmark of what being a successful author means. But it's not successful enough for their parents because they're not at the point where they can live off it yet. I don't know if you guys are aware that making a living as an author is about volume. You write enough books that your cumulative royalty checks give you enough to live on. So building up that career takes quite a while, because if you're really prolific, and I don't know very many authors, I can think of maybe 2 at this point, where you can write a book a year and the royalty checks really rack up. You can establish yourself in about a decade that way. But if you're right, like George R.R. Martin, that ain't going to happen. Most of his money is coming from, optioning for the TV show. It's probably not coming from the books because he doesn't write enough books. And so it's really hard. It gets harder and harder and harder as you're building towards that career because, you write your first book. Your first book is much easier than your second. Getting the second book published is because when you're first time, you're sort of like, well, you're writing in your spare time. You have an infinite amount of time to get that book polished and out there. And the minute you have one book hit, it's like, well, what do you have for a follow-up? And that's where it gets really difficult. The second book is so tough. And then you get the third, and then you get the fourth. But at that point, you're tired. You're exhausted. You're exhausted by all the negativity and the grind of not just producing the work, but promoting it and marketing it and dipping into your own pocket to do promotional materials, because nobody gets provided this anymore by their publishing companies. Authors and creatives have to pay for it themselves. And, even a crowdfunding campaign, and let me tell you, because I'm in the middle of this right now, preparing something, it is a ludicrous amount of work, just costing the incentives. The minute you want to ship one tangible incentive, one thing that people can hold in your hand, you have to calculate shipping for multiple regions. And it's not just the shipping, it's the the packaging to ship the stuff out in, and how are you going to do fulfillment? Who's going to address all those labels? Like, how are you going to do it? You actually have to figure out logistics, because if you don't, especially here in Canada where the postage is ridiculous, you can lose your shirt in fulfillment. And so it's a ridiculous amount of work. And when you see somebody else who seems to be doing it effortlessly, who seems to be having no trouble, it's not true. That's a misperception. But when they're faking it until they make it, it's really easy to envy that. It's really easy to see someone's temporary success and feel really bad about yourself. And some people, as a defense mechanism, will make it about the other person, when it's really not about that. I mean, the best thing you can have in any sort of entertainment industry is friends who are more successful than you. Because if you have friends who are more successful than you, they can help you. If you're surrounded by people who are less successful than you, they can't do anything to make you more successful. Assuming they're good friends and assuming you're good at what you do, they can use their contacts to help pull you up. If you're the most successful person you know, then, well, who can help you? Who can help increase your reach? You have to spend a lot of money on PR people with no guarantee of results. That's the crazy thing about hiring a publicist. I know people who have paid thousands of dollars to a publicist with very little to show for it, because there's no guarantee. There's a lot of bad luck sometimes, right? If, say, George R.R. Martin decides to finish the next Game of Thrones book next month, that's going to be a news cycle, and whoever is trying to promote their own stuff on that news cycle, sorry, out of luck, because everybody's after the big fish. And it's an intensely competitive world in entertainment. It's intensely challenging, it's intensely unfair, it's intensely fickle. And if you don't have a healthy amount of self-compassion and a decent financial cushion, it's very hard and it's easy to get very bitter. And because people also don't realize how long it takes to get anything done. I mean, I was just reading about a Selena Gomez produced project for some teen, I think it's on Netflix, but it took her 7 years to produce this thing. And when you think about how young she is, 7 years is a massive chunk of her life. That's a lot. And, moving into video games, there's years, like multiple years on a game, working before they even announce it. So it's all got to be super, super secret, which is very isolating. And years before it's even announced, before you can even remotely talk about what you're doing, and then you can't talk very much. And that's a very lonely place to be. And so I completely understand why you get these periods where gaming YouTubers just start going off the deep end, and developers start saying dumb things, and game journalists start alienating their audiences. All of this is profoundly in opposition to the way human societies are supposed to work. Even the most introverted person, that doesn't mean that they don't need contact. That doesn't mean introverted people don't get lonely. And the secrecy surrounding creative entertainment now, it's a lonely place to be. And it pushes people into, states of mental and emotional distress, and then they act very badly. And that's why I try to be cool. I try to be chill. I try to be understanding about people who don't have a pattern of bad behavior. Out of nowhere, they just start behaving erratically. And, it's you can't just jump to the conclusion that they're bad people. There's usually more going on there. And I mean, I know I've seen it. I'm dealing with this. I'm trying to help support, emphasis on trying. This one friend right now, brilliant person, but they're a hoarder, and it's coming up against the point where they have to do something about it, and that's very traumatic. I am getting a real crash course in what this condition actually is. And while that's going on, and while I'm dealing with that, trying to be a support person remotely, because I'm not even in the same city, I'm trying not to take out the strain of that on other people. And that's very hard, because it does change your perspective, and it's very easy to sort of feel like, you know what? This petty bullshit you're giving me right now, it doesn't matter. And that's part of what's wearing me out, is I've had to have been extra careful about the content I post lately, because I'm trying to be fair. I come at it from a place because I am a person who creates, and a lot of my stuff isn't sort of created under my own name. It's written material for other people to perform. I don't get treated like a creative. And that's very tough, and it's very easy to feel envious of the people that do get credit for being, a creative. They get asked about things. They get asked to give opinions on certain stuff, and it takes a lot of work to go, that's their time. Things come around. And I mean, a big source of it is, and this is why I don't understand why anybody turns off YouTube comments instead of cultivating good ones. The fact that I can go in and read comments and see the perspectives of people who were touched or made to think or whatever by the stuff I do, it helps stave off that feeling that I'm just running in place. And that is so important. And that is why I don't understand why anybody would disable comments. I know the reasons, but it makes so much more sense to work on getting those comments to be better. And you can't have zero jerks, right? But it makes more sense to, let people know that certain behavior is not okay, to go through and get rid of people who pick fights with other commenters. That's disrespectful to you guys who are my audience. And this is the last thing I want to touch on today, because it's going to, whenever a Mass Effect game drops, we end up talking about entitlement. And it is not entitled to expect a good experience, an enjoyable experience from a piece of entertainment that you have paid money for. And that doesn't mean, I'm going to be doing 2 hours of fully post-produced content every day. That's not what I mean. I mean, having a dialogue and being open and responding to comments and doing those things you guys have asked for. And in turn, you guys don't suffer fools in the comment section. And so the comment section is really good. So it is possible, right? And yeah, there are problems where you hit certain thresholds and then you get this influx of yahoos, and people who have been listening to this channel a while know that it's like we get yahoos for a while and then it settles down again, and then we get more yahoos and then it settles down again. But that doesn't just happen by accident. That happens because together we have decided to do that. And that is not entitled. That is not asking for something that is impossible. And I think too often, because game developers are down this rabbit hole. They don't realize that just because something hasn't worked so far doesn't mean it's never going to work. And I'm seeing so much copycatting, and I want to save my overall thoughts on Mass Effect for the podcast with Rich. That'll go up. We're recording it Tuesday, so it'll probably go up Wednesday. I want to touch on one thing from my video tomorrow, but I think that it's like, oh, well, we did the best with what we could. Instead of recognizing, okay, you had a budget and you had your overlords at EA and all that stuff, but what about the people that actually made that IP something that anybody cares about? Like, what about the people whose imagination was captured by that brand in past games and now wants that feeling again? That's not entitled. That's magical. That's the sort of thing that creators should strive for. But I think game developers are so far removed from their fan base now. They're just such a tiny cog in these giant machines that it's required to make these games, that has been lost. That they have lost sight because developers aren't allowed to talk to the press. Developers aren't allowed to talk to the public. They're shoved away. That wall of secrecy is causing an almost envy that developers have of their audiences. And so I'll leave it there. Hopefully that's food for thought. Like I said, it's a setup to some other stuff I'm doing this week. But let's close off. Let's do our Momo breathe in and out. Feel the fluffiness surround you and hug you and make you feel all comforted. Breathe in. And out. And breathe